it's really good to see you again in Albuquerque. Again, Steve. And this is my good friend, Steve Preskill.
My name is unimportant. The dialogue is what matters, so thank you.
Steve, we over 20 years ago.
It is wonderful to be here.
More than 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's back to, I think, 1997, so...
Lunch at Tom...
Didn't remember it wasn't 1997. That's how long you've lived in your house. So
yeah. Oh, it was
right
after that.
Yeah.
In those days, we called ourselves, with our good friend Lois Vermilia's term, thinking partners.
Yes.
But it also, we were talking because I had the opportunity for us to get some funding from a foundation that was interested in how communities, students, families, parents, could build their skill at talking and working together.
Right.
And we were seeing that as a way to enrich more civic participation and real democratic process in the schools. And we had great success with a number of school districts. We worked with a number of teachers. I remember at a middle school in Las Lunas, and the insights people had and what kids said. I mean, it was just a lot of fun and very dynamic. And it also led to us, with your leadership, putting together a sense of a booklet. I wouldn't call it quite a toolkit, but a description of how dialogue was really not a technique, but a way of being, a way of living that we wanted to support people in tapping in many aspects.
You know, the way I remember our book is that it was a little bit of both. That it was about a way of being, a way of coming together and talking together in a very collaborative way. But there were also some very specific techniques, I think, that we used that were included in the book. And I like that combination. I like being okay with this sort of broad notion of the atmosphere that we create and a whole climate that we create for interchange and for dialogue. But then I love to get to the concrete too, you know.
Yeah.
Here's a real specific, focused way we can go about this too, and that sort of models our way of being together.
You remember any of those? We've got them in a book. We have the sign here. We're not just marketing a book, but we had 13 ways we finally published, but more because you've written yourself extensively. Your career has been about helping people foster a kind of discussion, a way of talking and being together that how would you fill in the blank of why you promote discussion?
You know, one of the things I would say right away is that it's something that's as participatory as possible. You know, that everyone feels, and there's the hospitality thing too that we took
that
from
was
Parker.
A big theme.
Parker Palmer was very big on hospitality.
Yeah.
We create this atmosphere where people feel welcome. They feel invited to participate. And you know, the things like, I think it might be in our booklet, circle of voices, where you create a small circle of people and give each person a chance to say something in response to a question without interruption from others. So each person feels included and has a real place in the dialogue. And then after we've heard from everybody, then we kind of open it up, and everyone feels ideally a little more, you know, committed to being part of that dialogue.
It's almost that simple. Over the years since we've been together, I've been in Australia for years and working with new immigrants from all kinds of countries, most not speaking English. So we'd get them, because I was committed to sitting in a circle and not telling them what to do and asking, but I was having trouble figuring out what would be the circle of voices kind of question or check-in. And you know, the one that always worked was, what's your favorite color?
Oh yeah, wow.
As a way just to enter be it even if it was, well, I don't have a favorite color, or someone would say my favorite color is black, and someone would start to interrupt, and we'd say, no, be careful here. Right. Black's a color to them.
Right.
And it did what you were saying, and I've always said so well. It made people feel, the term I've been using recently, affiliated, a part of it, a participant.
Everybody has an answer to that question, even if, as you say, it's about I don't have, but everybody can enter into that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons it's a great question to start with in some ways. Yeah.
So, in your work, you've had and shared with us over your kind of signposts that it's about the relationship. Because we used to talk a lot about how a dialogue or a meeting could be about solving a problem or about, and you might have things to do, but for the most part I remember our sense was that no, this is about our connection and relationship to each other and how that helps each of us grow, understand things better, deal with even grief and things that don't have answers. As we talk again after a number of years, I'm kind of interested if what you have been noticing or about how people can put the relationship first when they're talking and conversing, and if we're doing that well.
I love the way you're expressing this and setting it up, and that is really important to me, and that it be about developing the relationship. One of the approaches that I've enjoyed very much over the years is the one that was developed by David Bohm, B-O-H-M, a physicist of all things, who believed in a completely open-ended kind of dialogue that wasn't meant to have any kind of outcome. And it was almost against trying to come to a conclusion.
That's a good point.
And it was about expressing ourselves, but without any pressure to speak, to let lots of time go by without anyone saying anything, and being patient with that. And sometimes things would come forward. We sometimes would do this around issues relating to racism and people's experience with it or their feelings about it. And there could be 2 or 3 minutes that would go by without anyone saying anything. And then someone would express something with great passion, with great emotion or heart. And it would lead to an exchange that sometimes could happen very quickly. So there's this willingness to go with a lot of different kinds of rhythms, I think, in dialogue, that it not just be a particular way of doing it, but it's truly open-ended. You don't quite know what's going to happen. Can I jump to
please.
crazy
we're just following ourselves here.
Recently in the New York Times, there was a piece about what it's like to have a stutter. A really serious stutter. And
I saw that.
And in the piece, this is a person who wrote it, who's a journalist who also has a serious stutter. He said a big part of interacting with a person with a stutter is just being patient. And just being okay with waiting for the words to be emitted, for the meaning to happen. And it didn't hit me until later, but I think it has a lot of connection to some of the discussions at their best that lead to some unexpected ideas and
lead us to parts of ourselves that we wouldn't find otherwise.
I love that. Lead us to parts of ourselves that we wouldn't find otherwise.
That would be the relationship. That would be the interdependence among us, and the dialogue is just a lovely structured way to invite that kind of growth and insight and discovery.
Yeah. And one of the great things about it is I think we begin to discover things in ourselves, but we also hear from others and others' experiences that broaden us so much and that expand our sense of possibilities.
Right.
Stimulate our imaginations.
Well, we had that in one of our other kind of practical activities. Remember the one where you're in a situation and you stand in the circle as though you were the mother, the parent, the businessman.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's almost like you do old spin a wheel, and then or you do chairs, 10 seconds, keep moving, then you have to take that view.
Right.
But by doing that, what I'm thinking is we actively broke a stereotype. I think you break a stereotype not with your thinking, because we know there's a lot of research out now that confirmation bias and how people will just see more, the exception proves the rule. We see that in our politics and our lives. But when you're in that conversation, you, as you just said, you start to experience someone in terms of who they really are at all their depths, not with the filter
And I think
we all have anyway.
I think that's one of the things we crave in discussion.
Yeah.
Is to begin to
Yeah.
to really get somebody in this deep way, in this way that we often don't see them.
Yeah.
And to the extent that a discussion protocol or a technique can help to open that up, it's just, in some ways it becomes invaluable. It's just so important in creating a sense of community.
I like that term. What's driving me, and I think we were doing, is to provide something of real value, and that means, in a sense, it's invaluable to our growth, to our connections, to our interdependence. I like that term. I hadn't quite heard of it that way, and I've always kind of felt that the way we're suggesting discussion, dialogue, you don't have to get too stuck on the term, but the way we are interacting with others can be invaluable to our survival and to thriving, to flourishing.
Yeah, and I think it can bring about connections to others that are stronger than they would otherwise be. And it goes to your word, affiliation.
Yeah.
We do feel affiliated and connected to others as a result of some of the things that are revealed in a truly open-ended sort of a discussion or dialogue or conversation or whatever your favorite word is.
Thinking partners over sopapillas for years that mean, even though I haven't spent as much time as I'd even want to, and you now live in New York and I'm living here, I just feel grateful and connected to you in a way that I never want to let go of.
Yeah.
And so it's really this new series and where our lives are going, it's nice to feel like there's a kind of positive drive to keep playing, keep discussion, keep being together.
I very much feel that too, and I love you bringing in being grateful or gratitude. I think there's something about the gratitude that we feel when we have this sense of connection to others that needs to be talked about, needs to be brought to the surface. I'm really appreciation too. I'm appreciated, or I'm really grateful to you for talking about it in this way, because it allows me to tap into something that I wasn't otherwise able to tap into.
Yeah.
And in my thinking about this, I just don't think enough can be said about gratitude and appreciation. We know much more about the power of gratitude, gratitude journals and how that can promote a quality of life that you wouldn't otherwise have. I think we should always find spaces. We sometimes call them appreciative pauses, just to say, wow, that was a great comment that really helped me see something that I hadn't seen
I remember
before.
those. And
Remember that?
Yeah. Well, maybe in that sense, being grateful is a characteristic of well-being, where well-being isn't something, it's just kind of like state, it's just kind of a place. I remember a group we've been with for years, and they met finally face-to-face for 2 days, and at the end, I just always said, like it was at our center up in Taos, there was just a smelling of sweetness. Like the woman braiding sweet, but there's a famous book out with indigenous views where it has sight, sound, and feeling.
Yeah.
And it's just that.
I love you're bringing in that, but also feeling. You mentioned thinking partners. I was also thinking feeling part.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I haven't acted on that nearly enough, but so much of dialogue at its best isn't just about thinking. It is about that sense of affiliation and connection that we make with people that come from strong emotions and strong feelings that we should never leave out of the discussions we're trying to have. It's such an important part of it. Such an important
Very
part of the
important.
experience,
There was one thing about looking to the future, which I like to do in these kaleidoscope conversations of reconnecting with relational leaders like yourself, and our whole series are people who live it, but how we can grow together in that. And when we were together years ago, I felt we had begun to get insight into a sense that dialogue was a cyclical process, that it had a dynamic, as you said, and even a rhythm to itself.
That's right.
We weren't trying to manage it, but just to describe so people understood, like winter, summer, spring, summer, like we know, because as indigenous people all know, life, and this is one just to introduce with you because we like to talk, everybody's all about how life is really a spiral. Well, I think I'm settling on the indigenous one, that it's just cycles, but they're never in the same place. They always move.
Yeah.
And I'm interested because I felt that sense we saw that the way we were looking at dialogue gave us a cycle of relating that we could fit in with all the other cycles of life to be aware of, and that they're just never in the same place.
And I feel like implied in what you and I have already said is a little bit of that cycle. So that cycle might start with participating. So how do we get people just to speak up and to feel comfortable in the circle? Okay, then when we move beyond participating, how do we move towards a sense of connection and even interdependence, that we're not alone here. Our thinking and our feeling spaces need to be stimulated by our interactions with other. And then how do we go even deeper? We had a term, and I'm not remembering it now, where we deepened the dialogue.
Yes.
That
was the term. It was deepening, and
of course that was the title of our book.
Well, as it should be, but I'm trying to remember the term too. But then what it led to wasn't like it wasn't a problem-solving cycle.
No, it wasn't.
It was just it deepened, and then it began again with hospitality, with what was discovered. In other words, it was cyclical, but you always knew it's deepening, and at that end, we knew that there was some kind of realization, and so we've got that. If people who like our dialogues and want it, you and I've talked, we'll be glad to send you a chart in progress and a little bit about it, because we'd love to continue talking about this as an interdependent way of being, and how we can all grow that and be aware of it.
You know, I feel a little bit of an obligation to say that crafting interdependence was actually originally coined by a guy named Kenneth Bruffy, who wrote one of the great books on collaborative learning. I don't think Ken Bruffy's still with us, but it was back in the 1990s, and it was just in some ways it took certain populations by storm, because it was talking about interdependence and collaboration and working together and thinking through problems and situations in group-oriented ways that had been too often ignored, particularly by academia. It was too individualistic. And this was getting at, no, we're not about individuals figuring this out. We're about groups wanting to come together to deepen our understanding and deepen our sense of, so there's deepen again, deepen our sense of feeling. But the word I think we both were trying to come up with is this sense of dialogue and discussion just wells up inside of you, and it becomes almost everything, is to be in you're in that you're steeped in it. That wasn't the word, but you're just, it's all that you can think of.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, it's almost like flow.
Yeah,
So
it's like, yeah.
The discussion is this thing that just goes on, and all you're thinking about is how to keep that dialogue going and make it as rich and go to as many different corners of possibilities as you can. Yeah.
There's so many examples any of our talks raise on that. The group we were with most recently in dialogue kind of made a joyful noise. And as our friend Lois, another one of our feeling thinking partners, said, that's the point of education and living is joy,
Yeah.
things being more joyful. And I think the fact, as we've talked about it, that joy is all dimensions. It's not one aspect. And it is possible. It is possible to live that way.
I think so too. You know, someone we both admire, and I hope it's okay to bring this up, is Ulrich Tolle. Is that how?
Oh, yes.
Am I pronouncing
Yeah,
it correctly?
no.
And he talks a lot about joy, but also ease and lightness.
Yeah.
So when you bring in joy, but you also have this sense of we're not taking ourselves too seriously, and there is this sense of lightness and sense of humor, and a desire to laugh, and an openness to laughing, and just have fun together, play together. I think playing.
Yeah.
We've also talked about dancing.
Yeah.
Together as part of this. I think that helps us see that the joy has a lot of different dimensions. That lightness, that ease, that delight in play, and again. Diane Ackerman's, another book that influenced us, Deep Play.
Yeah, that's a wonderful
It's a really
read.
wonderful one, isn't it? And
Edgar Sheen's Humble Leadership.
Humble Leadership.
Is about that.
That's right.
That ease
Right.
and the rest, and don't get too impressed with your...
Yeah. You might be impressed with the group, but we're not impressed with any one individual, which goes so much against most of Western culture, right? Which tends to be so individualistic.
Well, I love all our examples, and I hope all of you who've been listening to this conversation see how excited some of us have gotten, you get, about seeing not the potential for dialogue as a tool, but as this way of living, as a way of being in relation to others. And I think of it because so many of the people who are listening to us work with schools, and there's family, school, community. Leaders get overwhelmed because no matter what decision they make, somebody's not going to like it.
Sure.
With all the people they have to please. And I just wanted to kind of recommend to people that it really can be a win-win. And it makes me think of that book from years ago called Socrates' Cafe.
Oh, sure.
Wasn't Plato's Cafe, but I'm sure he did some dialogues too, where people of all ages just sitting in a coffee house,
Yep.
almost as you described, get into this cycle naturally with just a few considerations. And you especially have been trying to identify those, notice those. We want to keep exploring those with people. How by paying attention to a few considerations, that rhythm and cycle can be activated across all kinds of groups and roles and status to bring about this kind of more cohesive, more integrated, more interdependent living,
Nice.
where everyone can win.
Yeah, where everyone. That's a nice summing up. That's lovely.
And, yeah, well, that's one of them. Did you have anything you'd want to say? I just love you being willing to be in these conversations, because I'm usually a face-to-face man, and these cameras with I never quite know, but I always feel like a good dialogue just means what do we talk about next and when.
I know. So
I'm kind of excited
that's
to
one.
do that with
Well, exactly. That's one of the things that to me, this is very John Deweyan, that a good dialogue makes us want to have more dialogue. And that's what he meant by growth. You know, we do something that makes us want to do even more of it. And when dialogues go well, and when they are participatory, and they are joyful, and they are emotion laden as well as thought laden, it makes us want to do it more. It's so interesting that you brought up Socrates Cafe. I did a Socrates. That was Chris Phillips who wrote and then wrote a bunch of books about doing Socrates Cafes. I did one at Bound to Be Read in Albuquerque when it was still going, and I remember for a few weeks 20, 30 people would show up just hungry for dialogue, and it was so exciting. But the problem was so many people came that it was hard to give a space for everyone to speak, and then people got a little bit frustrated. So dialogues probably at their best, we're talking 10, 15, 20 at the most. But the spontaneity of just coming to a place, not knowing what you're going to talk about, and sitting down and deciding on the spot, here's what our topic's going to be, because that was one of the premises of a Socrates Cafe. To me, that was so exciting. And I love the idea of it. You know, how do we bring that back? If you've got lots of Socrates Cafes going on, I think that's a sign that democracy is back also as an important feature of our lives.
It would sure nurture things, because right now with 3 months of not traveling, and I've been a traveler, and COVID, I found out that what was the salvation, frankly, for me with people was always in meeting them, looking for whether there was a dialogue available between us. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
We could be friendly and courteous, but the question was, is there something here?
Where can we go with this?
Where can we go with this? And I find with that attitude, things usually go somewhere if you can wait long enough.
Yeah. And that waiting long enough, that patience can be important too in all of this.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thanks so much, Steve. I look forward to our next time together, and thank you for
Me too.
having this chat.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.